Hello, students, and welcome. Today, we're going to revise a very important chapter from your economics syllabus, Poverty as a Challenge. We'll go through all the key ideas in this explainer to make sure your revision is thorough and hopefully a little easier.
So let's begin by remembering that poverty is not a simple problem at all. In fact, it's one of the biggest and most, multidimensional challenges that our country has faced ever since independence. It's something that touches millions of lives.
In our session today, we're going to revise the entire chapter by covering these 6 key areas. We'll look at India's poverty challenge, what poverty actually is, how we measure it, the trends in India, its causes and solutions, and finally, the concept of human poverty. This should help make your understanding really clear. Okay, Section 1, India's Poverty Challenge. First, let's just briefly set the context for this very important topic. Now, it's absolutely crucial to understand that poverty is not just about a lack of money. It has many different aspects, which we'll see as we go along. And we can see its effects everywhere, in our villages and in our cities. All right, let's move on to Section 2. What is poverty? Now, let's recap what poverty actually looks like in daily life, using the examples from your textbook. So, we have 2 stories here that really help us understand. We see Ram Saran, who is a daily wage laborer in a city, and Laka Singh, who is a landless laborer in a village. Their stories show us the face of poverty in both urban and rural India. In these stories, they illustrate so well that poverty includes so many hardships. We're talking about hunger, poor health, lack of shelter, but also things like landlessness, unemployment, and even a feeling of complete helplessness and social exclusion. Section 3. How poverty is measured. Okay. Let's move on to a very important concept for your exams. How do we actually measure who is poor? Well, the most common method uses something called the poverty line. Now, this is an imaginary line. It's based on a minimum level of income or consumption that a person needs to fulfill their basic needs, like food, clothing, and shelter. It's really important for you to understand the difference between the older consumption-based line and the newer, much more comprehensive multidimensional poverty index, or MPI. The older one was based on expenditure needed for a minimum calorie intake, 2,400 in rural areas and 2,100 in urban areas. The MPI is, well, it's much broader. The national MPI that's used in India looks at these 12 indicators you see here, things like nutrition, maternal health, years of schooling, access to clean cooking fuel, sanitation, and even having a bank account. This gives us a much fuller picture of poverty that goes way beyond just income. Section 4. Poverty in India, Trends. Now that we know how poverty is measured, let's quickly revise the key trends of poverty in our country. The overall trend is actually positive. It shows a reduction in poverty over the years. But, and this is important, this progress is not uniform across different regions. There are wide disparities between rural and urban areas and among different states. And as this table shows, some social and economic groups, like scheduled tribes and casual laborers, are much more vulnerable to poverty. If you see the figures, their poverty rates are much higher than the all-India average. Now, just to give you a global perspective, international organizations like the World Bank use a common poverty line to measure extreme poverty worldwide, which helps in comparing across different countries. Section 5. Causes and Solutions. So, what are the root causes of poverty, and what is the strategy to fight it? Let's recap this quickly. The causes are very complex, you see. They range from historical reasons like the policies during the British rule to things like the unequal distribution of resources, income inequalities, and also social obligations that often lead to debt. So, the government's strategy is basically 2-pronged. First, promoting overall economic growth, and second, running specific programs that are aimed directly at the poor. And some very important examples of this targeted approach are programs like MGNREGA, which provides 100 days of wage employment, and PM Poshan, which helps to improve nutrition and also school enrollment. Section 6. The concept of human poverty. And this brings us to what I feel is the most important idea to conclude our revision with, the concept of human poverty. So, I want you to think about this. Is a person truly out of poverty if they have a minimum income, but they don't have access to education or proper health care? Mahatma Gandhi himself believed that true independence for India would only be achieved when the poorest of its people become free of all human suffering. So, this is the crucial point to remember. Human poverty is a broader concept of poverty that goes beyond just income. It includes a lack of education, healthcare, job security, self-confidence, and freedom from any kind of discrimination.
And this idea links directly to the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. So, for your exams, please remember to see poverty as a human and social issue, not just an economic one. The real challenge is moving from a minimum level of subsistence to a reasonable level of living. I hope this helps you revise. All the very best.